am Gloria Posha-Pritz, historian for the village of Mamaroneck. It was on September 23rd, 1661, when John Richbell, an Englishman, sailed into Mamaroneck Harbor to purchase land from the local Indians, the Siwanoy Indian tribes. Well, on September 23rd, 1661, he purchased the land from Chief Wapaquiwum, this land that we know as the town of Mamaroneck. 300 years later, in 1961, September 1961, the town of Mamaroneck had a grand celebration to celebrate the tercentenary of the town of Mamaroneck. A local businessman who had a photography store on Mamaroneck Avenue, Emil Caruso, saw to it that slides were taken to commemorate, to remember all of the events that took place that special celebration week. A few years ago, I was honored when Emil Caruso gave me this slide program to keep for historical purposes. And so today we are going to see the slides that he arranged to have taken, that he took, that he made into a program, showing all of the different activities that occurred that celebration week in September 1961. So here we go, and let's see what happened here in Mamaroneck in September 1961. It's fabulous. The first event we had was placing a wreath that's in the Old Town Cemetery on Mount Pleasant Avenue in Mamaroneck Village. The Scouts had a jamboree at Harbor Island. As you could see, they're all there in front of their teepees, which I'm surprised they had a teepee because our Indians had wigwams. And here we have the Indian chiefs, District Chairman Edmund Fanning and Scoutmaster Chief Bob Clark. And the Old Timers baseball game. We have the gentleman there standing in the back. The second from the left is Charles Baxter, and then we have Charles Gromberg and Bill Johnson and Romeo Labuciano, and kneeling in front, the only one we have that I know is B.J. Santoro. And here's a batter up at bat and another batter up at bat. They had a good time that day. And there's the baseball team in front of the bleachers with a good crowd watching. And we have Christine Helwig, Leo Heighthouse, Bill Johnson, and Charles Baxter, Jr. The Mamaroneck Artists Guild had an art show. President of the guild at the time was Grace Huntley Pugh. And I believe their exhibit was at the Mag Barn on Lower Prospect Avenue, Mamaroneck Artists Guild Barn. And here we have different exhibits of special art. Really, they look beautiful. And we have an artist doing some sketching with some interested onlookers. The opening ceremony on Sunday, September 17th at Larchmont Manor Park took place. It started things off with the Reverend Homer Rohn from the Barry Avenue AME Zion Church, Phyllis McGinley, Reverend McGuire, Dr. Edward Jackson, pastor of the Mamaroneck Methodist Church, Judge Baxter, and Richard McCutcheon. Reverend Floyd E. McGuire from Larchmont Avenue Church with the invocation. The Larchmont Community Chorus sang two selections. They sang You'll Never Walk Alone, and then they also sang the Lord's Prayer. Now this is the audience looking at all of the opening ceremonies. You'll notice those Quaker women sitting there in front. And here they are, these 7 happy Quaker ladies ready to participate. The Mamaroneck Negro Citizenship Night was held on Monday, September 18th at Mamaroneck Avenue School, and participating were Charles Pangborn, president of the Mamaroneck NAACP, Miss Judy C. Wright, Reverend Taylor of the First Baptist Church, Mrs. Leo Thomas, and at the very right, Lloyd Wallace. The women's choral group sang a beautiful number, and there was a men's singing group, quite a large group of them, in their white jackets. Now, the tour of historical sites was held on Monday, September 18th, and the first house we see is the Peter J. Monroe House, built in 1790, and it was known as the Manor House. And then we have the Griffin House, built in 1712 on Old White Plains Road. The Premium Mill House on Pryor Manor. The John Peter Delancey House, built 1792, originally on the location on Cortlandt Avenue where the Mamaroneck Women's Club House is, but now it's on West Boston Post Road. The Disbrow Burial Ground on Rockland Avenue. And we have students posing in the Palmer Burial Ground on Cooper Lane, and we had burials there from 1812 to 1917. And we have 2 boys in the Gedney Burial Ground on Mamaroneck Avenue, very close to I-95 entrance, and we had burials there from 1722 to 1919. And here we have a Quaker woman standing in front of one of our rivers or brooks. And we have a teacher and a child with the school bell in her hand, and they're standing in front of the 1804 Weaver Street School. And here's William Fulcher, and I believe Pearl Hannah standing in front of the Mamaroneck Chamber of Commerce building, which was then located on West Boston Post Road. Ye Old Toll Gate Restaurant on East Boston Post Road in Rye Neck, that was built about 1802. And here we have Peggy Locke, the Puritan, who is speaking to the women. This is in front of the Larchmont Public Library, which was originally the site of Samuel Palmer's home that was built around 1700. Not that 1684, I wouldn't think so. Tea on Tuesday afternoon, September 19th, and here we have 8 lovely ladies from Larchmont and Mamaroneck properly dressed for an afternoon tea. Half of them are even wearing hats, as was the custom of the day. These 4 people must be committee members, since 3 of them are wearing ribbons. They must have some important job to have done. 4 colorfully costumed women. The pink dress has see-through blue puffy sleeves. The purple costume is such a beautiful shade. And here we have 4 other ladies with gay costumes, all with fashionable accents. And part of that fashion show for the tea was Margaret Santoro Lucia, the Indian there on the left. Her costume, by the way, was made by her sister Carmela Abada, and then Jean de Bono. And the Indian on the right is Anne Abati Warrington. Harold Hagenbach in the bank. He was a banker. On Wednesday, September 20th at Mamaroneck Junior High School, which is now the high school Post Road, we have the historical tableau. And here we have Margaret Santoro with her second outfit, Letty Salmia, and Jean de Bono. And here the 3 women are handing out programs for those people going into the auditorium to see this historical tableaus, Mamaroneck through the years. And the very first scene is a Quaker scene at Sam Palmer's home. And Caleb Heathcote and Mrs. Heathcote in their new manor home, the Manor of Scarsdale. And sure enough, William Fulcher is Caleb Heathcote, and Pearl Hannah is Mrs. Heathcote. And this is a large reception at the opening of the new Manor of Scarsdale home there on Heathcote Hill. You know, in between all of these acts, Mamaroneck High School's chorale and string ensemble performed. Here's the Battle of Heathcote Hill that was put on by the White Plains Monument Committee. That battle took place in October 1776. The wedding of a local resident, Suzanne Delancey, to James Fenimore Cooper, that took place in the John Peter Delancey home on January 1st, 1811. And here we have men conducting an old Town of Mamaroneck annual meeting, which usually was held in April every year. A typical village board meeting. Apparently there was some kind of dissension because now those two gentlemen are shaking hands that they agree with whatever went on. That does happen. The current Town of Mamaroneck board and their meeting. Recognize anyone familiar from 1961? I recognize Christine Hellwood. And the audience at the junior high auditorium looking at all of these historical tableaus. It was a successful evening. The new chamber orchestra, they held a concert on Friday, September 22nd at night in the Mamaroneck High School auditorium. Aren't they delightful? Costume children. And of course, very many men grew beards to see who could grow the best beard for this particular celebration. And sure enough, these must be the judges. And I do see from the fourth from the left, Bill Johnson and Mamaroneck Village Mayor Joe Delfonso and the town supervisor George Burchell. And some of the beard raisers sitting down in the front with the corncob pipe is Mr. Pietro Abadi, Mr. Vitti, and John Funicello. Directly behind John Funicello in that white wide band collar was Mr. Dominic Tezzi. And here with the beard raisers, apparently John Funicello is the winner of having the best beard grown. And of course we have Miss Mayor Delfonso on the extreme left, and in the plaid jacket, Mr. Burchell. In the center there with the top hat, the black coat and the top hat, is Emil Caruso, and it is his slides that we are looking at today and enjoying. And next to Mr. Funicello on the right is John Funicello. These are the bearded football players. Isn't that interesting that they did that? Well, in the back row, number 31 is Skeeter Lucino. And two down, number 25 is Emil Caruso. Next to him, 84, is John Frioli. And in the front row, at the very left, is 48, John Funicello. And two over from him, number 76, is Ray Posha. And then Ralph Michelizzi. And there with the red suspenders, number 41, Charlie Trifoletti. And here we have school children standing in front of a beautiful mural. I don't know the school that it was held in. I have a feeling it was Murray Avenue, only because the stage looks familiar. And here they are portraying the actual purchase of Mamaroneck from the Siwanoy Indians. The gentleman, John Richbell, holding up the deed that he wrote out. It's really just delightful. And here is another picture of them doing that same purchase. The mural was beautiful. The Mamaroneck Garden Club held a flower show at St. Thomas's Church on Friday, September 22nd. And we do have these women doing the beautiful flower arrangements. They are so talented. And 3 arrangements. Aren't they beautiful? So here's 3 more. So clever the way they did that. And apparently this is a winner right here on the right, because there she has a ribbon, an award. And we have here an Indian head exhibit with Charles Baxter on the right in the dark suit. And sure enough, that Indian face has black-eyed Susans and cat-o'-nine tails. And these 4 women are with the floral piece that they made to place at the dedication of the monument in the Richbell Burial Ground. Dedication of the monument at the Richbell Burial Ground was held on Saturday, September 23rd at 10 a.m. There's John Richbell portrayed by William Fulcher, the town historian, with the consul generals from Great Britain and the Netherlands. Fulcher playing Richbell with the Reverend Wiley Merriman from St. Thomas Church. And here Fulcher is speaking history, talking about the cemetery and Richbell and the purchase. And here he is standing in front of the monument, ready to unveil it. There were very many people watching, and you could see the Mamaroneck Harbor right behind us. And this is Mamaroneck Avenue before the parade. The parade was to begin on Saturday, September 23rd at 2 o'clock. And the dignitaries are gathering for the parade. Promptly at 2 o'clock, the parade starts. The town motorcycle escort. By the way, the Grand Marshal for the parade was Colonel Fred T. Wilson. And now we have the dignitaries. This is an American Legion member who's the driver of the car. And the dignitary is Deputy Grand Marshal Colonel Frank E. Mott. And we have Judge Charles M. Baxter, Jr. and William Johnson. Town Supervisor George Burchell, and I believe New York State Lieutenant Governor Malcolm Wilson. Former Mamaroneck Village Mayor Ed Dooley, Mamaroneck Village Mayor Joseph Delfonso, Larchmont Village Mayor John Coffenberry, and Joseph Gagliardi. Sorry, I don't know who these gentlemen are. And we have the Portchester Legion Band coming on with their music. The baton twirler doing her thing. Beautiful. The parade advancing. Here they come. They look handsome. And the town board, Christine Helwig, was the only woman. She was on the board at the time. She was a trustee, but later on she became supervisor. Dignitaries. I believe these are the Larchmont Village Police. I believe. U.S. Air Force Color Guard. We had very many armed services men here in the parade. And this is the Air Force Band from Stewart Field. Soldiers from Fort Slocum. You know David's Island, Fort Slocum. Crew from the U.S. destroyer Bronson, which was anchored outside of Mamaroneck Harbor. And all week we saw these sailors come into town in different places. It was fun. The Fairfield Fife and Drum Corps, and that baton twirler is Margaret Santoro, who has won a number of medals for her baton twirling with fire. U.S. Marine Corps Reserve Color Guard, Civil Air Patrol, New Rochelle Squadron, 5th Missile Battalion, 7th Artillery, U.S. Air Force Staff Tank Car, Wanderers Fife and Drum Corps, VFW David Potts Jr. Post 1156, the VFW Auxiliary. You look smart, women. The GI Civic Club had a float, and included with the float were some women horseback riders. And I don't quite know where they came from or how and why they were included, but they sure added something to the parade. And the GI Civic Club also had a cart full of children, and on the cart it talks about their Halloween party. They had a Halloween party for the children of Washingtonville every fall. Battle of White Plains Monument Committee float. They were the ones who, in the tableau, acted out the Battle of White Plains. Look at that crowd watching. Freedom Land sent a stagecoach and carriage. And sure enough, it says it on that red carriage, American Express Overland Tour. The Stony Creek Fife and Drum Corps, and sure enough, they were led by some gentleman dressed up like Uncle Sam. Mamaroneck Chamber of Commerce float. Was everyone dressed as Indians, even those students in the back? And here we have a Charlie Chaplin as a policeman leading the bearded men. Oh, you're doing a good job there, Charlie. And there's John Funicello, king of the bearded men. He had such a full beard. And there's Emil Caruso. He also was a bearded man. And of course, he's the one who, because of his talent, his creativity, his work, we have these slides. And there's a bearded man dressed up like a Civil War soldier. And 3 costume men, gay, bright costumes. Another bearded man, we have Ray Posha, my cousin. He had very dark brown hair. It turned out his beard was red. He was so surprised. And here we have costume workers, and Mr. Vitti in his wheelchair is being wheeled down. Even his person wheeling him has a beard. And the gentleman at the right, dressed in the top hat, also has a young man dressed in the Uncle Sam costume. Everyone just had such fun doing it. And costumed, bearded men, very many men got into that, growing a beard, see what they could do. And here's Baby Lynn and Nurse Larry. Now, Nurse Larry there is pushing the carriage with Baby Lynn. A bicyclist doing tricks, added to the fun. Carpenters Union number 543, they were all costumed and marching in the parade with their wheelbarrow, and the gentleman on the first row way in the right, the gentleman there on the right with the blue apron is Mamaroneck Louis Talvey. And here we have the St. Denis Bugle and Drum Corps. Fashion Parade. The Annette Shop, a clothing store, women's clothing store on Lower Mamaroneck Avenue, decided to get the women together to dress in costumes for this particular celebration. And here we have on the left Jean DeBono in the dark brown outfit, and in the center Phyllis DeBono, and on the right Sandy Longo. And it's because of Sandy who all of this got started. And the young women, the junior women in their costumes. How in the world do they manage with the hoop skirts? Oh, there she is. Oh, grand, beautiful costume. My goodness. Oh. And here in that white Indian costume there in the center is Margaret Santoro Lucia. The boy in front of her is Louis Santoro, and the girl on the side of her is Lori Siegel Friedley, reference librarian at Mamaroneck Library now. In the white dress on the right is Mrs. Tom Giancolo, and a woman and a baby carriage with so many costumed women behind her in all kinds of costumes from decades and decades. You know, we never wear the same costume, the same style of dress 2 years in a row. Just beautiful. Ah, such fun. The two women in black dresses and parasols. Mrs. Rita Bryant with her black dress, she won third prize in the costume. Here, the woman in the peach costume is Nene Giuliano, together with some other gorgeously styled women. The Larchmont Lions Club float. The Mamaroneck Lions gun float. That gentleman there in the Jeep right there on the right is Jimmy Gunn. The Mamaroneck Kiwanis Club float. Seated there in the front on the very right is Steve Aloisi. Steve Aloisi. And now we have the float with Rich Bell and Wapaquiwam, you know, John Rich Bell, the purchaser, and Sachem Wapaquiwam, the Indian chief. And of course, Rich Bell is William Fulcher, and Wapaquiwam is John Corfield. And here's the float for the Mamaroneck Chamber of Commerce. At the time, Mamaroneck had very many equipment companies. The Shongut Boat and Engine Company float, the Bethlehem Knights of Columbus. They are visiting knights. I don't know where they're from, but it does say Bethlehem. And we have the King's Men Bugle and Drum Corps. Don't you like those blue drums all lined up? And the Mamaroneck and Larchmont Knights of Columbus. And the men from the Knights of Columbus that are not in their outfits. And the float for the Knights of Columbus through the courtesy of Lundin Construction Company. You realize the Knights of Columbus, Larcher Mamaroneck, had a scholarship fund where 10 cars, 1962 cars, were going to be awarded. Can you imagine their scholarship fund? And here we have the Larchmont Lodge, 1030 F and AM Masons, and the Mason Float, Masonry Around the World. Emmanuel Drum and Bugle Corps, Stepping Lively and Snappy. The Alhambra Genoma Caravan. Many residents wanted to take part in this celebration, this gorgeous celebration, and wished to be a part of it. And sure enough, this float, this moonbeam float that says Mamaroneck 1661-1961, was lovingly crafted by Michael Vitetta and Vincent Mandracchia out of an old car covered with cardboard boxes that they painted and decorated. Notice the smoke coming out of the smokestack. The Schaefer Brewing Company train. Schaefer Brewing Company had a large depot here on Mamaroneck Avenue. And sure enough, this is their very special train with a band with its own music. There in the sky lift up over the parade are the two photographers. The gentleman sitting down, peeking out from behind, is Ed Posha. They were up there for the entire time of the parade taking pictures, and you're seeing some of them. Ex-Chief Wilbur Miller of the Larchmont Fire Department and the Mamaroneck High School Band. Don't they look fabulous? And the baton twirlers, the majorette. Oh, girls, you look wonderful. And this is the Boy Scout Color Guard. And the Scouts in costumes. Just everyone wanted to get into the celebration. Indian Chief. And here's more boys in costume. You know, it was a very, very hot day, that September 23rd. And so I'm certain these boys were just thrilled to be able to march without shirts. Boy Scout band. And Cub Scouts. The Green Feather Dancers Troop 1 float. And the Leather Stocking Tales float. Leather Stocking Tales by James Fenimore Cooper. Jules Spiegel and his Flashing Whip. Jules Spiegel owned a newspaper store down on Lower Mamaroneck Avenue, and at the drop of a hat, he would perform for you with his rope tricks. He seems to have a mask on him. What is he, supposed to be the Lone Ranger? And the Rhinebeck High School Band. Oh, don't you love the blue color on their uniforms? And the cheerleaders, the Rhinebeck High School cheerleaders, the Panthers. Look at that panther riding high above them. Brownies. So many brownies, wonderful. We had so many children in the Scouts and the Brownies and the Campfire Girls. And here you see a different shot looking towards the railroad station, and you see the Girl Scouts with their flags. In fact, they're resting. I think one is even sitting down on the ground. And here we have a float, honor the past, serve the future. A beautiful slogan. The Mamaroneck Free Library float. The New Rochelle Boys Club Bugle Corps Band. Campfire Girls in costume. Looks like she's wearing bloomers. Larchmont Campfire Girls float. A beautiful painted canoe. And the girls wearing their Indian deer costumes. And the Bluebirds of Campfire Girls, 1910. Campfire Girls in costume, 1910, 1961. The Campfire Girls float. There they are. And apparently they have all their little groups, their little different logos for their group. Girls in blue nurses' uniforms. Young women. I'm sure they did a tremendous amount of work and help. The Rye Fire Department. In the parade, we had very many other fire departments join us in the parade, and Rye was just one of them. Neighboring fire departments were here with us. And here we have the banner for the Mamaroneck Village Fire Department. Women color guards. That band, we have someone dressed up in his top hat with a beard and his nose and the eyeglasses. Everyone just wanted to get into the act. Larchmont Fire Department. And the band, keeping them in step. And our Larchmont firemen walking proudly. And the Larchmont Fire Department, Engine Company number 1. Larchmont Hose Company number 2, and the date on that banner is 1889. And the Larchmont firemen with the fire hats, you know, the hats on fire, and black mustaches. There's something to see. It always adds something to a parade. Fire trucks. And we have another band. I believe these are Mamaroneck Village firemen. And we have some young firemen pulling a hose cart. And here these young men are dressed up in their white shirts and garb with their blue fire hats and red ties and black mustaches. And the Mamaroneck Village fire trucks. There's 5 or 6 of them, all the way down the line. Behind the fire trucks come classic old-time cars. I miss the running boards on cars. How does it hold up? There's nothing there but wheels and body. The woman has her duster on, that open-air car. Look at those lights. Headlights, 4 of them. And here at the parade, there was a reviewing stand further up on Mamaroneck Avenue. Speeches were made. The parade was reviewed. Lieutenant Governor Malcolm Wilson also spoke. After the parade at 4 o'clock that Saturday afternoon, there was the pageant at Harbor Island about Rich Bell purchasing the town of Mamaroneck from the Siwanoy Indians. And here you have it at Harbor Island Beach at low tide. That's the way it was at 4 o'clock that day. We have John Rich Bell, portrayed by William Fulcher, the town historian, coming in on a longboat and approaching the beach from the outer harbor. And we have the red men coming to greet the Europeans. Now, I mean, red men, they did not have red skin. They had skin the same color as all of us have. But, you know, they were known as red men, so for that particular pageant, They dyed their skin red. And here we have them greeting. The gentleman in the tan suit is portrayed as Mr. Griffin, who was the interpreter. He lived in Rye, and he was to interpret for Rich Bell, the Indian language, what was being transpired. And so here we have Chief Wapaquiwam, portrayed by John Corfield, being spoken to by Griffin, portrayed by Kenneth Watts, the interpreter. And then here's Griffin talking to Rich Bell, telling him what the Indian said. And the crewman, the European crewman, is showing the goods that they would be given for the purchase of the land. And here we have two Indians portrayed by Jack Greene on the left and Louis Mamora on the right. They're examining the firelocks. And apparently an agreement has been reached between Wapaquiwam and Rich Bell. And sure enough, Wapaquiwam is going to pass the peace pipe to Rich Bell, that an agreement has been made. And Rich Bell smokes the peace pipe. And here the Indians are gathering the goods that they were given for the deed for the purchase of the land. And they're walking away. Including in the purchase was 14 shirts, 10 pairs of stockings, 22 coats. And here is Sachem Wapaquiwam, portrayed by John Corfield. Indian, Harry Simon. Indian, Everett Knobloch. Indian, Louis Marmora. And this is an Indian who could be Charles Hessler or Ronald Green. Another Indian who could be Charles Hessler or Ronald Green. I'm sorry I don't identify you. An Indian chief, Mahatahan, who was portrayed by Alan Ernst. Indian Jack Greene. Indian Duke Shermer. The Indian named Coco, Paul Weber. And here are the 9 Indians, the 9 red men who were the Indians who partook in this purchase. Saturday night, after the party, the Mamaroneck Elks had a block party, and a crowd attended that block party, all just continuing their celebration. There's the men with beards who had the opportunity to shave off their beards all together. A fun time. And here they are, clean-shaven. I wonder, do they feel naked? And that gentleman at the right, he is Mr. Miller, who started Miller's Toy Store on Mamaroneck Avenue. On Sunday, September 24th at 2 o'clock, the Larchmont Yacht Club had a race. And here's the sailing ships out on Long Island Sound. Don't they look beautiful? And of course, on Saturday night, we had fireworks at Harbor Island. Beautiful, gorgeous fireworks that were just the end to a perfect day. And of course, this program, we thank Emil Caruso for working so hard to have these pictures taken, for setting them up as a program, for having us the special benefit of a reminder of that very special time that we had in September 1961 when the town of Mamaroneck celebrated 300 years. Thank you, Emil.